Everyone laughed at the beggar until she held up an old photograph. In the crowded lobby, a millionaire stood there, gasping for breath. "My mother said he would come back this way," the girl whispered. Upon seeing the photo, the millionaire fell to his knees, crying non-stop. If this story interests you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us from which city you are watching us. We continue. The lobby of the international airport was buzzing with its usual bustle. Businessmen in a hurry dragged their suitcases on silent wheels, families hugged goodbye, and disoriented tourists consulted electronic panels. Amidst this whirlwind of movement and haste, there was one fixed, almost unchanging point: a small 6-year-old girl wearing a red coat that seemed to shine against the metallic grey of the surroundings. Sophia stood there, motionless as a small statue, her attentive eyes scanning every face that passed by. In her delicate hands, she held a time-worn photograph, protected by transparent plastic. The image showed a smiling young woman with long brown hair, in a frozen moment of happiness. Laura, Sophia's mother, watched her daughter from a distance, sitting on one of the benches in the lobby. Her heart sank every time she saw her daughter perform her daily ritual. It was a routine that had begun a few months ago, when Sophia discovered that the airport was the place where people departed and returned from trips. "Mommy, if Daddy is traveling, he has to stop by here sometime, right?" The childish logic was irrefutable, and Laura didn't have the heart to destroy that hope. Since then, 3 times a week after school, they made the same journey. What no one knew except Laura was that the photograph was not just a happy moment. It was the last image of her with Elias Thaler, before he chose his meteoric career in Silicon Valley over the love they shared. At the time, she did not yet know that she was carrying Sophia inside her. Elsewhere in the airport, Alex Villa, the CEO of the country's largest technology company, strode through the lobby with his usual aura of authority. At 35, he had achieved everything he had ever dreamed of: recognition, power, and a considerable fortune. His face was frequently on the covers of business magazines, and his name was synonymous with innovation and success. That day, however, something interrupted his resolute walk. His eyes were drawn to a red dot in the crowd, a child, standing as if time did not exist around him, scanning the faces of the passengers with a concentration surprising for someone so young. Alex slowed his pace, intrigued. There was something familiar about the scene, something that bothered him in a way he couldn't explain. The girl was holding something in her hands, a photograph, he realized. For a moment their eyes met, and Alex felt a strange connection, as if those eyes held a secret he should know. Shaking his head to dispel the unsettling feeling, he continued on his way to the boarding gate. He had an important meeting in New York and could not afford to be distracted by emotional ramblings. After all, it was precisely his ability to stay focused and eliminate emotional distractions that had taken him to the top. But as he settled into his first-class seat, the image of the girl in the red coat lingered in his mind. In the days that followed, even amidst multi-million-dollar negotiations and strategic decisions, that scene at the airport continued to visit him at unexpected moments. What Alex didn't know was that this brief encounter would be the first of many, and that this small figure in red was about to trigger a revolution in his meticulously planned life. The girl who was looking for a father was, without knowing it, planting a seed of transformation in the heart of a man who had forgotten what it was like to feel. Over the next few weeks, Alex found himself changing his flying routine. Instead of delegating domestic travel to his executives as he usually did, he began personally making appointments that took him to the same airport. He told himself it was just curiosity, a little mystery his analytical mind needed to solve. The girl was there, punctual as a Swiss watch, always wearing the same red coat, always with the same photograph. Alex began to observe her discreetly, hidden behind his newspaper or laptop. There was something about the silent persistence of that child that touched him in an inexplicable way. One particularly busy afternoon, while pretending to work on his laptop, Alex noticed something different. The girl wasn't in her usual spot. His eyes scanned the lobby until he found her sitting on a nearby bench, intent on organizing small colored rocks she'd collected from the garden outside. The pebbles were lined up in perfect rows, organized by size and color with almost mathematical precision. Alex's heart skipped a beat. It was just like he had done as a child. His mother used to joke that he had an invisible ruler in his brain. Such was his obsession with order and symmetry. He approached slowly, as if magnetized by the scene. "Do you like organizing things?" he asked, surprising himself with the initiative. Sophia looked up, meeting the well-dressed stranger's gaze. There was no fear in his expression, only quiet curiosity. "Yes," she said simply. "It looks better when everything is in the right place." Laura, who had been watching the scene closely, immediately approached. Her maternal instincts warned her about strangers, but something in the man's posture made her hesitate. There was genuine fascination in his gaze. "Sorry," Alex said to Laura. "I didn't mean to scare you, it's just—" He hesitated, searching for the right words. "I used to do that too when I was a kid, exactly like that." It was then that Laura recognized him. His face was in every business magazine. It was impossible not to know who Alex Vila was, but there was something else in his expression, something that deeply disturbed her. "What's your name?" Alex asked. The girl gently. "Sophia," she replied, turning her attention back to the pebbles. "And you?" "Alex. Nice to meet you, Sophia." The girl smiled, a smile that lit up her entire face. "Do you want to see my special picture? It's of my father. He's traveling, but one day he'll be back." Before Laura could intervene, Sophia was already holding the worn photograph out toward Alex. Time seemed to freeze as his eyes fell on the image. The air rushed out of his lungs, and he felt the ground shake beneath his feet. The woman in the photo was Laura, years younger, but unmistakable, and standing next to her, himself. A younger version, with longer hair and casual clothes, but unmistakably him. The photo had been taken during their last trip together, before he left for Silicon Valley to pursue his dreams of success. The world around them seemed to fade away. The sounds of the airport faded to a distant hum. Alex looked at Sophia, really, looked for the first time. The girl's eyes, a unique shade of brown with tiny flecks of gold, were identical to his own. The way she arranged the stones, her methodical concentration, even the way she tilted her head slightly as she thought. They were like mirrors of his own gestures. Laura remained silent, watching the realization spread across Alex's face. She had known this moment would come eventually, but nothing could have prepared her for the intensity of that encounter. Alex spent the night awake, tossing and turning in his king-size bed in the penthouse apartment overlooking the park. The white minimalist walls that had once given him a sense of order and control now seemed suffocating. Sophia's image wouldn't leave his mind, her gestures, her smile, the way she arranged the pebbles. Every detail was irrefutable proof of what his heart already knew. The next morning, he cancelled all his appointments, something he had never done before in his career. His assistant, Martha, nearly had a meltdown when she got the message. In 15 years of working for Alex, it was the first time she had seen him postpone a board meeting. He drove to Laura's apartment building, an address he had found through his contacts. It was a simple but well-kept building. Sitting in his black Porsche, he watched as Laura left to take Sophia to school. The girl wore a navy blue uniform and carried a backpack with unicorns on it. Her red coat, even on a normal day, accompanied her. He waited until they returned. When Laura showed up alone 2 hours later, he finally worked up the courage to get out of the car. His hands, which normally remained steady during the most tense negotiations, now trembled slightly. "We need to talk," he said, as soon as Laura spotted him at the entrance to the building. She didn't show any surprise. She seemed to have been waiting for this moment. "Go up," she replied simply, pressing the elevator button. The apartment was cozy, decorated with photos of Sophia, at different ages. Children's drawings covered the refrigerator, and neatly arranged toys occupied a corner of the room. Alex noticed an electric piano leaning against the wall. He had also taken piano lessons as a child. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" His voice came out more accusing than he intended. Laura poured 2 cups of coffee before answering. Her movements were calculated, as if each gesture were part of a script rehearsed many times in her mind. "I tried," she began, sitting down on the couch. "When I found out you were pregnant, you were already in California. I sent dozens of emails, left messages with your secretary, but you were too busy building your empire to notice that there was someone desperately trying to reach you." Alex felt the weight of those words. He remembered how, in the first months after his departure, he had devoted himself obsessively to his work, ignoring anything that might distract him from his goal. "After 3 months of trying, I got an automated email saying your inbox was full. That's when I knew you had truly moved on," Laura continued, her voice carrying years of pent-up hurt. "I decided I was going to raise my daughter alone. I went back to college, got a job at a publishing company, built a life for the two of us." Alex looked around the apartment, noticing the details that spoke of a life built with determination and love. Graduation photos, medals from school competitions, certificates from music courses. Each item told the story of moments he had missed. "Sophia." "She's extraordinary," he said, his voice breaking. "The way she organizes things, the way she observes, everything. It's exactly how I was." "Yes, she is," Laura agreed, a soft smile playing on her lips. "Sometimes it's scary to see so much of yourself in her. The same precision, the same intensity in doing things. Even the way she frowns when she's concentrating." A heavy silence settled between them. Through the window, the sound of the city seemed distant, as if the world outside respected the gravity of that moment. "I want to be a part of her life," Alex finally declared. "I want to make up for all the lost time." Laura set her cup down with a firm movement. Her eyes, once soft, hardened. "It's not that simple, Alex. Sophia is not a project you can take on whenever you see fit. She's a child who grew up believing her father was on a long trip, a child who goes to the airport every day waiting for someone who never showed up." The words hit Alex like a punch to the gut. The reality of the situation, the complexity of the feelings involved, all of it, weighed on his shoulders in a way no corporate decision ever had. "What do you suggest then?" he asked, his voice betraying his vulnerability. "If you really want to be a part of her life, it's going to have to be on my terms," Laura replied firmly. "First, you can't just show up and declare yourself her father. That would destroy her. Second, you're going to have to prove that you're serious about this. I don't want her to suffer when you realize that being a father interferes with your board meetings." Alex left Laura's apartment with his head spinning. In the elevator, he loosened the tie that seemed to be suffocating him. Laura's conditions echoed in his mind. He could approach Sophia only as a friend, someone who had met her at the airport. The title of father would have to be earned with time and dedication. For the first time in his life, Alex Villa was facing a challenge that could not be solved with money or influence. There were no shortcuts, no corporate strategies that could speed up the process. This was completely new territory for him. The following week, following the plan established with Laura, he met Sophia again at the airport. This time he approached her with a package of chocolates. Laura had mentioned that it was the girl's favorite candy. "Hello, Sophia," he greeted, sitting down on the bench next to her. "I remembered you were organizing Pebbles the last time we saw each other. I brought something you might like to organize too." The girl's eyes lit up when she saw the chocolates. "Can I separate them by color?" she asked, already opening the package carefully so as not to tear it. "Sure," Alex smiled, recognizing her own neatness reflected in her daughter's actions. "What's your favorite color?" "Red," Sophia replied without hesitation, sorting the chocolates into neat rows. "Like my coat. Mommy says red is the color people notice the most, so it'll be easier for Daddy to find me when he comes back." From his trip, Alex felt his heart sink. He watched silently as Sophia worked intently, her tongue poking out slightly from the corner of her mouth. Another gesture he recognized as hers. In the days that followed, Alex completely reorganized his schedule. He delegated meetings, cancelled international trips, and for the first time in years began leaving the office at his regular time. His executives were perplexed by the change, but no one dared question it. Afternoons at the airport became the most anticipated time of his day. Sophia began calling him her airport friend, a title he carried with more pride than any business award he had ever received. He discovered that his daughter was passionate about music, just as he had been as a child. When he learned that she was taking piano lessons, he discreetly arranged for the music school to receive new instruments. He could not help her directly, but he found subtle ways to improve her life. One particularly hot afternoon, Sophia surprised him with a question. "Why do you always come here?" "Are you waiting for someone too?" Alex swallowed, remembering Laura's instructions. "Actually," he replied carefully, "I come here because I like talking to you. You know, sometimes the most interesting people we meet are the ones who keep us company in the most unexpected places." Sophia smiled, a smile that lit up her entire face. "I like talking to you too. You organize things like me, and you don't think it's strange that I come here every day." That night, alone in his apartment, Alex found himself crying for the first time in years. Silent tears streamed down his face as he looked through old photos on his laptop, pictures of him with Laura, moments of happiness he had sacrificed in the name of ambition. He opened his email and found Laura's old messages, lost in a spam folder he had never checked. There were all her attempts to reach him, including the news of her pregnancy. The date of the last email coincided exactly with the day he had changed his email address, in an attempt to streamline his professional communication. Autumn had arrived, turning the trees in the park golden. Alex watched the changing seasons from his office on the top floor of the Villa Tech corporate building, but his mind was far from the spreadsheets and reports that usually consumed his days. Martha, his assistant, noticed the subtle changes in his behavior. The man who used to be always connected to his cell phone now spent long moments looking out the window at the city. His schedule, previously filled with international commitments, now prioritized local meetings, always making sure he was free. On Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday afternoons. "Mr. Villa," Martha interrupted his morning thoughts, "the board is concerned about your absence from the recent video conferences with Asian investors." Alex swiveled his chair around, facing the assistant who had been with him for so many years. "Martha, you have children, don't you?" The question took her by surprise. It was the first time in 15 years he had shown any interest in her personal life. "Yes, 2 boys. And you get to see them grow, even with this work?" Martha hesitated before answering. "To be honest, not as much as I would like. I missed Marco's first theatre performance last year because of that meeting in Dubai." Alex nodded thoughtfully. "Cancel any upcoming international trips. Let's restructure the way we work. Technology is here to bring us closer, not further away from the people who matter." The news of Villa Tech's restructuring spread like wildfire through corporate corridors. The workaholic billionaire was implementing flexible hours, encouraging home office and, most surprisingly, delegating responsibilities that he previously had exclusively in his hands. Meanwhile, his relationship with Sophia grew stronger with each meeting. He discovered that she loved chocolate ice cream with hot fudge, just like he had when he was a child. In the afternoons at the airport, between one pebble sorting session and another, she would tell him about her day at school, her piano lessons, her dreams. "Did you know I'm going to be an astronaut?" she declared one afternoon as she drew stars in her notebook with mathematical precision. "I'm going to travel through space and find new planets. Maybe I'll meet Daddy up there." Alex swallowed, feeling the weight of that innocence. "And why astronaut?" "Because astronauts see the world differently," she replied with childlike wisdom. "From up there, everyone looks tiny and the same. There are no rich people, no poor people, no one who gives orders, and no one who obeys. Everyone is just a little blue dot." Those words hit Alex like a bolt of lightning. In his years of building his empire, how many times had he forgotten that he was just another blue dot in the universe? How many relationships had he sacrificed for the sake of a success that now felt hollow? Laura watched the father-daughter bond with a mixture of apprehension and hope. She noticed how Alex was never late for their meetings, how he always had something special prepared for Sophia, a new book, a challenging puzzle, an interesting story about the constellations. One afternoon, while Sophia was busy with her new puzzle, Laura approached Alex. She asked if you could come to her piano recital next week, she said quietly. His heart raced. It was the first time Sophia had invited him to something outside of the airport. Do you think it's a good idea? She trusts you, Laura replied simply. And to be honest, you've proven yourself to be different from the man who left 7 years ago. Alex felt the weight of those words. Different how? The ruthless executive was still there, but now there was something else. A softness he didn't even know he had. A desire to be better, not for the zeros in his bank account, but for the smile of a girl in a red coat. The music school auditorium was packed for the spring recital. Alex, sitting in the third row, nervously adjusted his tie. It was the first time he would see Sophia perform, and an unfamiliar anxiety consumed him. Laura had given him specific instructions: arrive early, sit at a respectful distance, and keep to a low profile. Still, his hands were sweating like they never had before a board presentation. Sophia would be the 5th performer of the night. When she took the stage, her petite frame almost disappearing behind the grand piano, Alex felt his heart stop. She was wearing a navy blue dress and, of course, her inseparable red coat. The first notes of Für Elise filled the auditorium. Sophia played with absolute concentration, her posture identical to that which Alex had maintained during his own childhood piano performances. Every note was executed with precision, but there was something more, a genuine emotion that transcended technique. During the presentation, Alex noticed something curious. Sophia had a little ritual before each more complex section. She would take a deep breath and tilt her head slightly to the right, just like he did during his important corporate presentations. As the last note echoed through the auditorium, there was a moment of silence before applause erupted. Sophia stood up, took a shy bow, and instinctively her eyes searched the audience for her airport friend. When she found him, her face lit up with a smile. After the performance, in the school lobby, Sophia ran up to him, still buzzing with energy from the performance. "Did you see I didn't miss a single note?" "Yes, I did," Alex replied, controlling the emotion in his voice. "It was perfect. You have a special gift for music." "Mommy said my dad played the piano too," Sophia said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, another gesture he recognized as hers. "I wonder if he played that song too." Alex exchanged a quick glance with Laura before answering. "I'm sure he'd be very proud to see you play like that." On the way home, Sophia fell asleep in the back seat of Laura's car, exhausted but happy. Alex followed them in his own vehicle, keeping a discreet distance. When they arrived at the building, Laura gestured for him to accompany them to the apartment. "She won't be waking up any time soon," Laura commented, as she tucked Sophia into bed, still dressed in her performance attire. "Want some coffee?" In the kitchen, between cups of strong coffee, Laura watched Alex curiously. "You cried during the presentation," she noted. "Did you notice?" he asked, embarrassed. "Of course. I noticed. It's the same face you made when you played Beethoven on that old piano at the conservatory where we met." The comment brought back a flood of memories. The music conservatory, where he taught to pay for his business degree. Laura, a young literature student who attended his students' performances. The romance that blossomed over scores and sonatas. "I gave up music when I went to Silicon Valley," Alex confessed. "I thought it was an unnecessary distraction. What an idiot I was." "People change, Alex," Laura replied softly. "You're different. I see it in the way you treat Sophia, how you respect our conditions, how you've tried to be a part of her life the right way." A comfortable silence settled between them, filled only by the ticking of the kitchen clock and Sophia's soft breathing, coming from the next room. It was a moment of peace Alex hadn't experienced in years. An unexpected letter changed everything. Laura received an invitation to a PhD program in comparative literature at the University of Barcelona. It was the opportunity she had always dreamed of, a full scholarship lasting 3 years with the possibility of extension. Sitting at her desk in the publishing house, she reread the invitation for the 10th time. The words seemed to leap off the page, provoking a mixture of elation and apprehension. How could she consider such a drastic change now that Sophia was finally developing a connection with her father? That same afternoon, Donna Helena, Laura's mother, arrived unexpectedly. After years living in Portugal, she decided to return to the country, claiming she missed her granddaughter. But Laura knew her mother well. There was something more to that sudden return. "So it's him?" Donna Helena asked as she watched Sophia playing in the building's playground. "The famous Alex Villa, who now plays at being a father." "Mom, please." Laura sighed. "Things are more complicated than they seem." "Complicated?" Donna Helena let out a dry laugh. "What's complicated about abandoning a pregnant woman and showing up 7 years later when you've already built your empire?" Laura didn't answer right away. She watched Sophia, who was methodically organizing her toys in the sandbox, sorting them by color and size. "He's trying hard, Mom. And Sophia, she feels a connection to him that even she doesn't understand." "And now, with this proposal from Barcelona, are you going to let this connection stop your daughter from having an international experience, from seeing her mother realize her dream?" The question hung in the air like a dark cloud. Laura had no answer. The invitation to Barcelona was everything she had ever wanted professionally, but the idea of separating Sophia from her father, now that they were finally building a relationship, tormented her. The next morning, during a child therapy session, Sophia's psychologist made an interesting observation. "She drew something different today," she said, showing Laura a colored drawing. "Usually she draws you and her at the airport. Today she included the airport friend in the scene, and look at the eyes, she drew them exactly like hers." Laura felt a tightness in her chest. Sophia was unconsciously acknowledging her connection to Alex. How could she break that bond? Now, the situation became even more complicated when Sophia started asking more specific questions about her father. "Mommy, does Daddy like to organize things like me and Uncle Alex?" "Why do you ask that, dear?" "Because the teacher said that we inherit things from our parents, like the color of our eyes, and Uncle Alex has the same eyes as me, and he organizes everything the same way I do." Laura felt her blood run cold. Sophia was putting the pieces of the puzzle together faster than she had expected. Her daughter had always been perceptive, observant, another trait she had inherited from her father. That night, after putting Sophia to bed, Laura texted Alex, "We need to talk, it's urgent." They met in a discreet cafe in the city center. Laura placed the invitation from Barcelona on the table without saying a word. Alex read the document in silence, his face gradually losing color. 3 years, he finally managed to say, in Spain? "It's the opportunity of a lifetime, Alex, but Sophia is finally getting to know me," he added, his voice thick with emotion. "She's starting to trust me, to let me be a part of her life." "It's not just that," Laura hesitated. "She's starting to notice the similarities between you. She asks questions, notices details. It won't be long before she realizes the truth." Alex ran his hands over his face, a gesture Laura knew well from when they were dating. It was his way of processing difficult information. "And what do you plan to do?" "Honestly, I don't know. On one hand, it's my dream, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. On the other hand," she looked out the window, watching the bustling city, "how can I take away her chance to meet her father now that it's finally happening?" Alex spent the entire night in his penthouse office, surrounded by computer screens and a half-empty bottle of mineral water. It wasn't coffee or alcohol that kept him awake. It was the desperate need to find a solution. On the main screen, a PowerPoint presentation showed different scenarios and possibilities. This was how he always solved problems: analyzing data, creating strategies, finding innovative solutions. But this time, no chart or spreadsheet could point him in the right direction. Martha found him in the same position the next morning, his eyes red with fatigue, his tie loose around his neck. "Mr. Villa, Chinese investors are waiting on the line for the video conference." Alex looked at his assistant as if seeing her for the first time. "Martha, have you ever had to choose between your career and your children?" The assistant pulled out a chair and sat down, something she never would have done a few months ago. "Actually, sir, I choose this every day. Every extra hour, Every trip, every weekend meeting, they're all little choices between career and family. And how do you deal with that? Honestly, I always regret the times I chose work the most, she replied, surprising herself with her candor. My oldest son did a theater performance last week. I was in Dubai closing that deal. Do you know what he said to me when I got back? It's okay, Mum. I'm used to it now. The words hit Alex like a punch in the gut. How many kids grew up hearing similar excuses from parents too busy building empires? That afternoon, instead of going to the airport, Alex drove to Sophia's school. He watched from afar as she walked out, carrying her unicorn backpack and, as usual, her red coat. She was chatting animatedly with a classmate, gesturing with her hands the same way he did during his corporate presentations. An idea began to form in his mind. It wasn't a conventional solution, but since when did love and family follow the rules of the corporate world? He drove straight to Laura's apartment. Donna Helena answered the door, her suspicious look turning into surprise when she saw the businessman's condition. Disheveled hair, deep circles under his eyes, folder of documents crumpled under his arm. "Is Laura there?" he asked, not bothering with formalities. "He's in the office working on the response for Barcelona," Donna Helena replied, watching him curiously. Alex found Laura surrounded by papers, drafts of her research project spread across the table. She looked up, surprised by his presence. "I have a proposal," he said without preamble. "Villa Tech is expanding its operations to Europe. Our main innovation center will be in Madrid, just an hour by train from Barcelona." Laura blinked, processing the information. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that you accept the scholarship, that you take Sophia on this new adventure, and I—" He took a deep breath. "I'll give up the CEO role here. I can coordinate the company's expansion operations in Madrid, be present in Sophia's life, support her doctorate." "Alex," Laura interrupted, "you built your empire here. Do you have any idea what you're proposing?" He smiled, a tired but determined smile. "Do you know the difference between an empire and a family? You can rebuild an empire anywhere. A family, you only get one chance to make that work." The announcement of Villa Tech's restructuring hit the financial market like a bombshell. Shares fluctuated, analysts speculated, and the specialized media talked about nothing else. "Alex Villa leaves executive presidency to lead European expansion," headlined the news. On his last day at the office in the capital, Alex watched the city from the top of his office, while Martha organized the last pending tasks. The assistant, who had always seen him as an obstinate workaholic, now witnessed a transformation that few understood. "The transfer papers are ready," she said, placing a folder on his desk. "And, well, I took the liberty of including this." Martha held out a small envelope decorated with star stickers. Inside was a drawing by her youngest son, a smiling stick family. On the back was a simple message: "Thank you for letting Mommy come home early this time." Alex felt his throat tighten. The changes he had implemented in recent months, flexible hours, working from home, valuing family time, were not just affecting his life. They were transforming the lives of hundreds of employees. At the airport, Sophia continued her waiting routine. But something had changed. Now, in addition to the old photo, she carried a colorful atlas that Alex had given her. Together they marked the places where her traveling father might be passing through. "Do you think he might be in Spain?" she asked one afternoon, pointing to Barcelona on the map. "It's possible," Alex replied, exchanging a meaningful look with Laura, who was watching the scene closely. "Why don't we mark this place in red? It's your favorite color, after all." Donna. Helena, who had initially opposed the idea of moving to Barcelona, began to notice subtle changes in her granddaughter. Sophia spoke of her airport friend with a familiarity that went beyond casual friendship. She once caught the girl explaining to a classmate, "He understands the way I think. It's as if we were the same on the inside." On a particularly significant afternoon while Sophia was practicing the piano at home, Donna Helena confronted Alex in the building's lobby. "Are you really going to give up everything you've built here?" she asked, skepticism evident in her voice. "Mrs. Helena," he replied, remaining calm, Have you ever wondered why I built all this in the first place? To have power, prestige, money. No, he interrupted her gently. I built all this because I thought success and recognition were the only way to prove myself. It took me 7 years to realize that I was completely wrong. From the apartment, the notes of Fur-Elise floated through the open window. Sophia had a habit of playing this song whenever she was happy or anxious, another trait she had inherited from her father. You know what's ironic? Alex continued. I spent years accumulating wealth, thinking it would give me freedom, but I've never felt as free as I do now when I've decided to give it all up for her. Donna Helena looked at the man in front of her. He was no longer the arrogant executive from the business magazines. There was a humility in his eyes, a vulnerability that made him genuinely human. What if she finds out the truth before it's time? The grandmother asked, her main concern finally coming to the surface. What if she realizes who you really are? So, Alex replied after a moment of thought, I hope she understands that sometimes we have to get completely lost to find our way back home. The music in the apartment stopped abruptly. Hurried footsteps came down the stairs, and Sophia appeared in the doorway, her eyes shining with excitement. Grandma! Uncle Alex! Come and see! I've learned a new song! She exclaimed, pulling them by the hand. It's a song about a father who comes home after a long trip. Alex felt Donna Helena's eyes on him as they climbed the stairs. They were no longer eyes of judgment, but of understanding. Sometimes, true heroism lies not in great achievements, but in the courage to start over. Laura's apartment was filled with moving boxes. Sophia spent hours organizing her belongings into meticulously planned categories, toys by size, books by color, clothes by season. On her bedroom wall, a giant world map was marked with red post-its, tracing the route from the capital to Barcelona. Do you think you can see the stars better from here? She asked Alex, who was helping her pack her collection of astronomy books. Well, Barcelona has fewer tall buildings than the capital, he replied, carefully wrapping a beginner's telescope he had given her. And it has amazing beaches for observing the night sky. Laura watched the two interact as she organized documents. The connection between father and daughter was increasingly evident, even if Sophia didn't know the truth yet. Every gesture, every way of thinking, every little quirk. It was like looking through a mirror through time. The move to Barcelona was not just a new academic adventure, it was a chance for everyone to rebuild. Laura had secured an extension on her scholarship, allowing Sophia to complete at least one full academic year at the new school. Alex, for his part, had already begun preparations for the company's transition, delegating responsibilities and preparing the structure in Madrid. One afternoon, while packing up Sophia's piano trophies, the girl asked a question that took everyone by surprise. Uncle Alex, why are your eyes the same as mine? The silence that followed seemed to last an eternity. Laura froze in the middle of labeling a box. Donna Helena, who was folding sheets in the next room, appeared in the doorway. Alex knelt down to Sophia's level, his heart beating so hard it felt like it was about to jump out of his chest. You know, Sophia, sometimes people who aren't related can have similar characteristics, like the way you organize things, she asked, her shrewd eyes fixed on his. Exactly, he replied, keeping calm despite the storm raging inside him. And the taste for hot fudge, and the way you tilt your head when you play the piano. And Sophia, Laura interjected softly, realizing her daughter was closer to the truth than they realized. How about we take a break? There's ice cream in the fridge. Later, after Sophia fell asleep, Laura, Alex, and Donna Helena gathered in the kitchen for a serious conversation. She's putting the pieces together, Laura said, her voice thick with concern. She's very observant, always has been. Maybe. Alex hesitated, choosing his words carefully. Maybe it's time we start laying the groundwork, not telling her everything at once, but letting her come to her own conclusions gradually. Donna Helena, who had maintained a thoughtful silence until then, finally spoke up. Do you know what surprises me? It's not the fact that she's finding out. It's how she seems ready for it. It was true. Over the past few weeks, Sophia had begun to create elaborate theories about her similarities to Alex. Instead of looking for her imaginary father at the airport, she now spent more time wondering about families, genetic inheritance, and most importantly, how some people just fit into each other's lives. The week before moving to Barcelona was intense. Between paperwork, final arrangements, and goodbyes, a different routine was established. Sophia insisted on keeping her meetings at the airport, but now she spent less time looking at the passengers and more time talking to Alex about her discoveries and theories. "Did you know there's something called DNA?" she said one afternoon, as she sorted through her seashell collection, her newest hobby. The teacher explained that's why people in the same family have similar things. Alex felt his heart race, but he maintained the calm he had learned to cultivate over the past few months. "Really? And what else have you learned about it?" "That sometimes we inherit things from our parents that we don't even know about," she replied, her eyes fixed on a particularly interesting shell. "Like the shape of their eyes, or the way they smile, or—" She stopped abruptly, as if something important had just occurred to her. Alex waited, his heart pounding so hard it seemed to echo through the airport lobby. "Uncle Alex," she began, her voice suddenly serious, "did you know my father?" The question hung in the air like a soap bubble, delicate and ready to burst. Alex glanced at Laura, who was sitting a few feet away and had clearly heard the question. She gave a small nod. It was time to start planting some seeds of truth. "Yes, Sophia," he replied softly. "I knew your father." The girl's eyes widened, bright with curiosity. "What's he like? Does he like music too, and organizing things, and hot fudge?" Alex felt a deep emotion well up in his chest. "Your father," he began, choosing each word carefully, "is someone who has made many mistakes in his past. Someone who for a long time thought that success meant having a lot of money and power, but then he discovered that he was completely wrong." "What do you mean?" Sophia asked, abandoning her shells to pay full attention. "He discovered that true wealth lies in the people we love, in the time we spend with them, in the little things we share, like organizing collections, eating chocolate ice cream, or playing the piano." Sophia absorbed each word with surprising intensity. Her eyes, so similar to Alex's, seemed to see beyond the words. "And will he ever come back?" she asked, her voice lower, almost a whisper. Alex felt tears forming in his eyes, but he didn't hold them back. "Actually, Sophia, I think he's already coming back. Little by little, the right way, learning to be the person you deserve to have as a father." Laura, who had approached silently, placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder. "Honey, sometimes the people we love the most are closer than we imagine. We just need to open our hearts to see them." Sophia was silent for a long moment, her little face intent as if she were trying to decipher a particularly difficult musical score. Then, with the wisdom that only children possess, she said something that touched the hearts of both adults deeply. "You know, Mommy, I think my heart is already wide open. That's why I feel like I already know Daddy, even though I've never met him." At that moment, a call for an international flight echoed over the airport's PA system. Sophia automatically looked toward the boarding gate, a habit she had acquired over months of waiting. But this time, instead of looking for a stranger among the passengers, she grabbed Alex's hand. "Can we go get ice cream?" she asked, smiling. "I guess I don't have to wait here anymore today." Alex exchanged an emotional look with Laura. Something had changed that afternoon, as if an invisible thread had finally been connected. The last weekend in the capital arrived faster than anyone expected. Alex had organized a small farewell party in the garden of his building. Nothing too grand, just the closest people. Sophia was radiant in her new blue dress, of course, combined with her inseparable red coat. Martha showed up with her 2 children, bringing a cake decorated with chocolate musical notes. Other Villa Tech employees, who had gotten to know Sophia during her visits to her father's office, also came to say goodbye. The girl had won everyone over with her methodical manner and her bright smile. During the party, Sophia remained unusually close to Alex. He was no longer just her airport friend. He was someone who held an increasingly special place in her heart. She followed him around the party, unconsciously mimicking his gestures, sharing her observations of how the clouds formed interesting patterns in the sky. "Look at that," she exclaimed at one point, pointing upward. "That cloud looks like a piano. Is that a sign that I'm going to be a great pianist in Barcelona?" "Absolutely," Alex replied, smiling. "You're already a great pianist here. Barcelona will just be lucky enough to hear you play too." Laura watched their interaction with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. Moving to Barcelona wasn't just an academic opportunity. It was a chance to rebuild her family in a way she never imagined possible. Donna Helena, who in recent days had considerably softened her stance towards Alex, approached him during a quiet moment at the party. "You know," she began, her voice gentler than usual, "when Laura told me you'd reappeared, I was afraid it was just another way to hurt my daughter and granddaughter. But now—" "Now?" Alex prompted, curious about his mother-in-law's change in tone. "Now I see that sometimes we need to give a second chance, not only to others, but to ourselves." Sophia always knew, deep down in her heart, that she would find her father. Maybe she saw something that we adults took so long to see. The conversation was interrupted by Sophia, who came running with a piece of cake. "Grandma, look! Martha made the musical notes exactly the way I organize my sheet music." Later, as the party began to wind down and the sun painted the sky orange, Sophia asked to play one last song on Alex's piano, which would be donated to a local music school after his departure. She chose a composition of her own, something she had been secretly working on for the past few weeks. The notes flowed softly and melancholy, but with a hint of hope that made everyone present fall silent to listen. "What a beautiful song," Laura commented when Sophia finished. "What's the name?" Sophia smiled, that smile that lit up her entire face. "It's called Journey Home." Because sometimes, she looked directly at Alex, we have to travel very far to find out that our place was always so close. Alex felt the tears streaming down his face, making no effort to hold them back. Laura discreetly held his hand, and for a moment they were again that young couple in love from the music conservatory, sharing dreams and melodies. The day of the departure dawned with a fine drizzle typical of the capital. The airport, the scene of so many meetings in recent months, would now be the stage for a different farewell. Sophia was especially quiet that morning, her red coat looking even more vibrant against the grey sky. Alex had arranged everything to make the trip as comfortable as possible. A luxurious van picked Laura, Sophia and Donna Helena up at their home, transporting not only their suitcases, but also Sophia's digital piano, carefully packed for the international trip. On the way to the airport, Sophia kept her face glued to the window, observing the city she would leave behind. Her attentive eyes recorded every detail, as if she wanted to save a mental map of her memories of São Paulo. "Is Uncle Alex really going to visit us in Barcelona?" she asked, for the third time since they got into the car. "Yes, I will," he replied patiently, sitting next to her. "Actually, I'm going to live in Madrid, remember? It's really close to Barcelona." "Like you live close to us here in the capital?" The innocent question carried a weight that made all the adults look at each other. Sophia was increasingly weaving her own connections, putting together her own emotional puzzle. In the airport lobby, the place where the whole story had begun, a surprise awaited Sophia. Martha had organized a small performance with the children's choir from the music school where the girl studied. When Sophia arrived, her friends began to sing a special version of Für Elise, arranged especially for voices. The girl's eyes filled with tears, but she kept her chin up, just like Alex did. When he was emotional, Laura noticed the gesture and felt her heart tighten. It was amazing how certain traits passed from father to daughter, even without living together. "Did you know that?" Sophia asked Alex, her voice cracking. "Let's just say I had a small part." "In the planning," he replied with a soft smile. As the choir sang, Sophia did something unexpected. She walked to her usual waiting spot, that specific spot in the lobby where she had spent so many afternoons looking for her father. She stood there, as if she were saying goodbye, not just to the place, but to an entire phase of her life. "Alex," approached slowly, respecting his daughter's moment of reflection. Sophia then took out of her pocket the old photograph she always carried with her, the image of Laura and Alex as young people, captured in a moment of happiness. "You know," she said, her voice surprisingly mature, "I don't think I need to wait here anymore." "No," Alex asked softly, his heart pounding. "No," she confirmed, looking directly at him. "Because sometimes we look for something for so long, and when we find it, we realize we already found it a long time ago." Laura, who had been watching the scene closely, felt tears streaming down her face. Sophia was expressing, with the unique wisdom of children, a truth that they had been carefully constructing over the past few months. "And what did you find, Sophia?" Alex asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The girl smiled, that smile that was like a ray of sunshine after the rain. "I found someone who organizes things like me, who likes hot chocolate the same way I do, who has the same eyes as me." She paused, as if choosing her next words carefully. "I found someone who makes my heart recognize things that my head is still trying to understand." At that moment, the airport PA system announced boarding for the flight from Barcelona. Sophia put the photograph in her pocket, and for the first time since she had begun her journey of waiting at the airport, she did not look anxiously at the arrival gates. Instead, she held Alex's hand tightly. The first week in Barcelona was an explosion of colors, sounds, and emotions. The apartment that Alex had helped her choose was in a quiet neighborhood, close to the university where Laura would be studying, and Sophia's new school. From the balcony, she could see the Mediterranean, its blue waters dancing under the Spanish sun. Sophia, always methodical, had already organized her new room using her own classification system. Her books, now a mix of titles in Portuguese and Spanish, formed a rainbow on the bookshelf. The digital piano occupied a prominent place near the window, where natural light created a perfect environment for her practice. "Look, Mom," she exclaimed, one morning pointing to a pigeon that had landed on the balcony. "Even the pigeons here seem more organized than those in the capital." Laura laughed at the observation as she packed her own books for the start of her doctorate. The move had been challenging, but seeing Sophia's enthusiasm for each new discovery made it all easier. Alex, true to his promise, had already made 3 train trips from Madrid to visit them since they arrived. On each visit, he brought with him not only gifts but most importantly time, something that had previously seemed so scarce in his life. One particularly sunny Sunday, while strolling through Park Güell, Sophia made a discovery that would change everything. She had brought her sketchbook, determined to record the unique patterns of Gaudí's architecture. "Look," she said, showing Alex her drawing. "I drew the 3 of us, me, you, and Mom, and you know what's even better? When I look at the old picture I always carry around, I realize you haven't changed that much. It's just your hair that's different." The moment they had both feared and waited for had arrived. Alex looked at Laura, who nodded slightly. It was time. "Sophia," he began, sitting down on a nearby bench, "remember when you asked me about your father? About what he was like?" The girl nodded, her eyes fixed intently on him. "And do you remember what I said? That he was someone who made mistakes, but was learning to be the person you deserved to have as a father?" Sophia nodded again, and then something in her eyes changed. That gleam of recognition, of deep understanding. "Uncle Alex," she said slowly, "you're not just my friend from the airport, are you?" The air seemed to grow thicker around them. Laura walked over, sitting down, next to her daughter. "No, honey," Alex replied, his voice cracking. "I'm your father." Sophia was silent for a moment, processing this information. Then, with the same precision with which she organized her collections, she began to list, "That's why we have the same eyes, and the same way of arranging things. And we like the same music, and—" She stopped, took the old photo from her pocket and held it next to Alex's face. "And that's why I always felt like I knew you, even before I met you at the airport." There was no screaming, no dramatic crying. Instead, Sophia did what she always did when she discovered something important. She organized her thoughts out loud. "So, you weren't traveling. You were lost. But now you're found, and I helped you find yourself, didn't I?" The days that followed the revelation in Park Güell were a time of adaptation for everyone. Sophia, with her unique sensitivity, began to test the new word at different times. "Dad, have you seen my new sheet music? Dad, can we organize my shell collection together? Dad, were you also afraid of the dark when you were little?" Every time the word Dad left Sophia's lips, Alex felt his heart skip a beat. It was as if each dad was a small achievement, a brick in the construction of a relationship that should have started 7 years ago. Laura watched this transformation with a mixture of joy and apprehension. One afternoon, while Sophia was practicing the piano, she found Alex on the balcony, watching the sunset over the Mediterranean. "She's handling all of this better than we thought," Laura commented, joining him. "I think somehow she always knew," Alex replied, his voice soft. "All those afternoons at the airport, she wasn't just waiting for an unknown father, she was giving me a chance to find my way back." The sound of the piano floated across the balcony. Sophia was playing the song she had composed, Journey Back Home, but now with some modifications. The melancholic notes of the beginning had given way to a more hopeful melody. "You know what's amazing?" Laura continued, a soft smile on her lips. "She doesn't hold grudges. For her, these 7 years weren't an absence, they were preparation, as if the universe knew we all needed this time to grow." Alex felt tears form in his eyes. "I don't deserve this much understanding." "It's not a question of deserving it," a voice came from behind them. It was Donna Helena, who had decided to extend her stay in Barcelona to help with the adjustment. "It's a question of accepting forgiveness when it comes from a pure heart." His mother-in-law, who had previously looked at him with suspicion, now showed an understanding that only years and wisdom can bring. "You know, Alex, for a long time I judged you for the man you were. Now I see the man you have become." The piano music stopped, and Sophia appeared on the porch, carrying a folder of sheet music, carefully organized by difficulty level, her new rating system. "Dad," she called, that word still sending a wave of emotion through everyone, "I found a song I think you'll like. It's about a father and daughter who go on a long trip together." Alex sat down at the piano with Sophia, as he did every afternoon now. His fingers, a little rusty from years of not practicing, began to follow the melody his daughter played. It was a simple song, but full of meaning. "When did you stop playing the piano?" Sophia asked, watching her father's fingers search for the right notes. "When I felt I had to choose between music and success," he answered honestly. "It was one of the many mistakes I made." Sophia thought for a moment, her face taking on that concentrated expression that was so characteristic of Alex. "But now you can start over," she said simply. "I'll teach you. I can be your piano teacher since you're my father." The ease with which she spoke about her new reality touched everyone. There was no hurt in her voice, only acceptance and love. It was as if, for Sophia, the puzzle of her life was finally complete, with all the pieces fitting into the right place. Autumn in Barcelona painted the streets with golden hues, creating a perfect backdrop for the new chapters that were unfolding in the lives of this newly reunited family. Alex's office in Madrid was finally organized, following, of course, the classification system that Sophia had created especially for him. Train journeys between Madrid and Barcelona became special moments. Sophia would always wait on the platform, her red coat like a beacon guiding Alex home. On one of these journeys, she gave her father a special notebook. "This is our music diary," she explained, showing the carefully divided pages. "Here we'll write down all the songs we've learned together, all the performances we've done, all the special moments." The first page was already filled with Sophia's childish handwriting. "First piano lesson with my dad. He's a dedicated student, but needs to practice his scales more." Laura, immersed in her doctoral research, found time to observe the evolution of their relationship. Alex had completely transformed her professional routine. Important meetings were now scheduled around Sophia's piano performances, not the other way around. One afternoon, while father and daughter were practicing a duet on the piano, Laura received an interesting email. It was an invitation to participate in an international research project on children's literature and family ties. The project would allow her to extend her stay in Barcelona for another 2 years. Look at this, she showed Alex the email. Over dinner. It seems like the universe is conspiring to keep our family together. Family? Sophia repeated the word, savoring every syllable. You know what's the best thing about having a family? It's like an orchestra. Each one plays their own instrument, but together we make much more beautiful music. Sophia's musical metaphor struck a chord in everyone's hearts. Alex, who once measured success in numbers and charts, now measured it in moments. The first dad, Sophia said, the first song they played together, the first secret they shared. Donna Helena, who observed everything with the eyes of someone who had already lived a long time, made a surprising announcement. I have decided to sell my house in Portugal. I'm going to move to Barcelona. But Grandma, Sophia asked, why? Because, my dear, when we find our perfect melody, we need to stay close so we can hear it every day. Alex realized that his former mother-in-law wasn't just talking about music. She was talking about second chances, about forgiveness, about the ability of love to transform and heal. That night, after Sophia went to bed, Alex found a note in her work folder, written in her daughter's neat handwriting. Dear Father, did you know that some songs take a long time to be finished? The composer has to try several times, change some notes, until he finds the perfect melody. I think families are like that too. Sometimes we need time to find our perfect song. With love, Sophia. P.S. Don't forget to practice your scales. Winter arrived in Barcelona, bringing a gentle Mediterranean breeze. Alex, who now spent 4 days a week in the city, had rented an apartment in the same building as Laura and Sophia. The proximity allowed family moments to multiply naturally, without the pressure of time or distance. One particularly cold morning, while sorting through some boxes that had arrived from the capital, Sophia found something interesting. An old piano trophy, dusty and a little chipped. The name engraved on the gold plaque read, Alex Villa, First Place, National Conservatory of Music, 1995. Dad, she called, rushing into the room where Alex was working remotely. Why didn't you ever tell me you won piano competitions? Alex looked at the trophy with a mixture of surprise and nostalgia. Where did you find this? It was in a box that Grandma Helena brought from the capital. There are more things here. Look. Sophia pulled out a yellowed envelope full of old photographs. The photos told a story that Sophia had never heard. A young Alex sitting at the piano on various stages, Laura in the audience applauding, the two sharing moments of pure joy amidst scores and melodies. You were really good, weren't you? Sophia asked, her eyes shining with curiosity. It was an important part of my life, Alex answered honestly. Music. It helped me express things I couldn't say with words. And why did you stop? The question, as simple and direct as only children know how to ask, hit Alex hard. Laura, who had approached silently, was also waiting for the answer. Because I made the mistake of thinking that success meant giving up who I really was, he replied after a moment of reflection. I thought that to be respected in the business world I had to leave music behind, leave my dreams behind, leave, he looked at Laura, the people I loved behind. Sophia processed the information with her usual concentration. But now you can go back to playing. We can perform together, can you imagine? Father and daughter on the same stage. The idea lit up Alex's face. You know, that's not a bad idea. In fact, he paused, remembering something. He picked up his laptop and opened a file he had been saving for weeks. It was a blueprint for a foundation he was planning to create, a space dedicated to bringing families together through music. Sophia, he called his daughter over, what do you think about helping Daddy with a special project? Over the next few hours, father and daughter worked on the project. Sophia, with her methodical organization, helped to prioritize the ideas. She suggested activities, programs, and ways to help other children find their own music. We could call it Melodies of the Heart, she suggested proudly. And the symbol could be a red coat hanging from a treble clef. Laura watched the scene with tears in her eyes. Here was the man she had fallen in love with at the music conservatory all those years ago. Not the cold executive he had become, but the passionate musician who knew how to touch people's souls. Donna Helena, who now lived in the apartment next door, showed up for afternoon tea and found the living room transformed into a makeshift office. Papers with notes covered the table, all arranged in Sophia's characteristic style. On the piano, a new score was being composed by 4 hands, father and daughter creating their own melody together. "What's going on here?" she asked, curious about the commotion. "We're creating something special, Grandma," Sophia replied with a beaming smile. "Something to help other families find their music, just like we found ours." Spring in Barcelona brought with it not only flowers, but also the first fruits of the Melodies of the Heart project. The old warehouse that Alex had bought in the Gracia neighborhood was being transformed into a cultural center dedicated to music and families. Sophia followed every detail of the renovation with the same meticulous enthusiasm she devoted to her sheet music. She had suggested that each classroom be painted a color from the musical spectrum, creating a rainbow of melodies throughout the building. "This is going to be the red room," she explained to a group of architects, using her inseparable coat as a reference. "This is where the families will meet for the first time, because red is the color that attracts the most attention. Remember?" The professionals smiled, delighted with the little consultant who spoke with such authority. Alex, watching the scene, felt his heart overflow with pride. Sophia had not only inherited his perfectionism and love of music, she had transformed these characteristics into something even more special. Laura, who was now dividing her time between her doctorate and a research project on the impact of music on family development, found her own space at the Cultural Center. She was creating a library specializing in musical literature, with a bilingual collection to serve families of different nationalities. "You know what's amazing?" she said to Alex one afternoon as they sorted through their books. "Sophia is living out the dream you had to give up, but in an even more beautiful way. She's not just making music, she's using music to bring people together." The project soon began to attract attention. Families from all over Barcelona signed up for the inaugural classes. Alex, who had previously measured success in market numbers, now measured it in smiles, hugs, and shared melodies. One particularly significant afternoon, while testing the newly arrived pianos, Sophia made a thrilling discovery. In one of the instruments, she found an old sheet music of Für Elise, the same piece she had played at that recital in the capital when Alex was still just her airport friend. "Dad," she called, her eyes shining with an idea, "how about we do a duet of this song at the inauguration? You play the low part, I'll play the high part, and together we tell our story." Sophia's suggestion perfectly captured the essence of what they had built. The song that had previously symbolized waiting and absence would now be transformed into a celebration of reunion and new beginnings. Donna Helena, who had become a constant presence in the project, overseeing everything from the selection of curtains to the coffee menu, watched everything with teary eyes. "Who would have thought," she commented to Laura, "that the girl waiting at the airport would end up building a bridge much bigger than she imagined?" The cultural center was almost complete. The colorful walls, the new instruments, the cozy rooms, everything had been designed to create an environment where other families could find their own melody. In a quiet moment, as Sophia practiced with her father the duet for the inauguration, she made an observation that touched everyone deeply. "You know, Dad, when I was at the airport looking for you, I thought I was waiting for someone to come back from a trip, but now I understand that I was actually waiting for all of us to learn a new song. A song that needed time to be ready, that needed all of us to be complete." The day of the inauguration of the Centro Cultural Melodias del Corazón dawned with a perfectly blue sky over Barcelona. Sophia woke up before her alarm clock, an infectious energy emanating from her every gesture as she arranged her new dress, blue as the sky, with red details, of course. The old red coat, now stored in a special box, would be displayed in a glass case at the center's entrance, along with the worn photograph that Sophia had carried for so long at the airport. They were symbols of a journey that had transformed not just one family, but was about to touch the lives of many others. "Are you nervous, Dad?" Sophia asked, as she helped Alex fix his tie, red, a deliberate choice that made them both smile. Little, he admitted. It's been a long time since I've performed in public. But you practiced a lot, she replied, with the wisdom that only a 7-year-old piano teacher could have. And besides, when you play with your heart, the notes always come out right. The main hall of the cultural center was packed. Families from all over Barcelona, representatives of music schools, journalists, and to everyone's surprise, even some executives from Villa Tech who had traveled especially from the capital for the event. Martha was there with her children, now dedicated violin and cello students. She smiled, remembering how it all began with a simple act of compassion when she decided to deliver that star-studded envelope to Alex. Laura, elegant in a navy blue dress, opened the event with a moving speech about how music had the power to reconnect lost bonds and create new paths of love. Donna Helena, sitting in the front row, could not contain her tears of pride. Then it was time for the duet. Sophia and Alex sat down at the piano, adjusting their stools in perfect synchrony, a gesture so similar that it brought smiles to the audience. Before they began, Sophia whispered something in her father's ear, making him smile in a way that lit up his entire face. The first notes of Für Elise filled the hall, but it was not the traditional version that everyone knew. Father and daughter had created a special arrangement where the classical melody intertwined with excerpts from Sophia's composition, Journey Home. It was as if each note told a part of his story, the moments waiting at the airport, the casual encounters that weren't so casual, the discoveries, the recognition, the love that was always there, just waiting for the right moment to blossom. As they played, images were projected onto a screen behind them. A young Sophia in her red coat at the airport, Alex watching her from afar, their first meetings, the afternoons spent organizing Pebbles, the recital in the capital, the move to Barcelona, and finally the construction of the cultural center. As the last note sounded, there was a moment of absolute silence before the audience erupted in applause. Sophia and Alex embraced, and in that moment, they weren't just father and daughter playing the piano, they were two souls who had found their perfect harmony. Laura came up on stage to join them, and Sophia had a spontaneous idea. She pulled her mother over to the piano, and together they played an impromptu version of Happy Birthday, not to celebrate a birthday, but to celebrate a rebirth. See? Sophia commented later as they received greetings from their guests. We didn't need to look so hard. Our music was always here. It just needed all of us together to be played right. Alex looked at his daughter, amazed at her wisdom. How did you get so smart? Sophia shrugged, a gesture that was reminiscent of both Laura and Alex. I guess it's because I have the best teachers. You taught me how to organize things. Mom taught me patience and music. Well, music taught me that. Sometimes we need silence between notes to make sense. A year has passed since the inauguration of the Melodies del Corazón Cultural Center. The project had grown beyond the most optimistic expectations, becoming a reference point in Barcelona for families looking to reconnect through music. Sophia, now 8 years old, continued to be the lifeblood of the place. Her unique method of organization had been adopted by all the classrooms, and her story inspired each new family that arrived. The red coat in the front window, along with the old photograph, was like a beacon of hope for everyone who entered. Alex had found a balance he had never imagined possible. Villa Tech continued to thrive, but now with a different philosophy. The flexible schedule and family-friendly program had become a model for other companies, and the cultural center was inspiring similar initiatives in other cities. One special spring afternoon, while Sophia was organizing a new collection of sheet music in the library that bore Laura's name, now a PhD in literature and coordinator of the center's educational program, she made an interesting discovery. "Dad, look what I found," she called, holding up an old notebook. It was the musical diary Alex had kept when he was a student at the conservatory, full of notes and unfinished compositions. "That gave me an idea," Sophia continued, her eyes shining with that familiar light that comes when she has a new project in mind. "How about we finish these songs together? We can do a special concert, Tell your story through the melodies you left behind. The suggestion touched Alex deeply. But some of these compositions have been incomplete for over 20 years. Exactly, Sophia exclaimed. Just as you needed time to find your way back home, these songs also needed to wait for the right moment to be finished. Laura, who had been listening to the conversation, smiled. She's right, you know. Sometimes the best stories are the ones that take time to tell. And so a new project was born, Unfinished Melodies. Father and daughter spent months working on Alex's old compositions, giving them not only an ending, but a new meaning. Helena, who had become the official grandmother of all the children at the cultural center, watched with pride how her family had transformed. The businessman who was focused solely on professional success had become a present father, and a rediscovered musician, the little girl who was waiting at the airport, had transformed into a wise and inspiring young woman. On the day of the Unfinished Melodies concert, the cultural center was filled with stories, not only of Sophia's family, but of all the other families who had found their own path through music. Before they started playing, Sophia gave a short speech that perfectly summed up her journey. You know, when I was younger, I thought I was waiting for someone to come back from a very long trip. But now I understand that sometimes we need to make our own journey to find the people who have always been there. Music is like a map that helps us find our way back home, to the people we love, to who we really are. The concert was much more than a musical performance. It was a celebration of second chances, of unconditional love, of melodies that even unfinished never lost their beauty. And there, on that stage, playing with her father, the songs he had left unfinished so many years ago, Sophia understood that some stories don't need an ending. They continue forever, like a melody that passes from generation to generation, always renewing itself, always finding new chords, new ways to touch the heart.